Good evening and a very warm welcome to this edition of the Big Debate. I'm your host, Igoma Gabriel. Glad that you're joining us for this edition of the show. Would like you to participate in the show today, so please use the hashtag SEETV BIG DEBATE. That will ensure that we're able to see your questions and your comments as you follow the show and interact with us. Today on the show, we'll be looking at the controversy around Uganda Airlines with really the aim of seeing whether this airline can succeed and become profitable. Uganda Airlines commenced its operations in 1977. It worked with a mixed, with mixed results between that time and 2001 when it ceased operations. It returned to the market in 2019, about 18 years after it had ceased operations. On its return, there was a big promise of what the future held for Uganda Airlines. It did start quite well with 4 aeroplanes. 2 more were purchased to do the longer routes, and everything seemed to be going quite well until very recently when Uganda Airlines has been in the news for the wrong reasons. The Committee on Commissions, Statutory Authorities and State Enterprises has been following up with some findings in the Auditor General's report, and therefore has been quizzing the officials at Uganda Airlines. Some of the quizzing has revealed disturbing information. Well, today we will dig deep into those issues, but before we go any further, let's meet our guest for tonight's Big Debate.
Our panel tonight. Martin Mugabe Muzale Chisule is a member of Parliament of Buzaya constituency located in Kamuli district on the NRM ticket. He's also a member of the Public Accounts Committee Commissions, Statutory Authorities and State Enterprises COSASE in the 11th Parliament that has been making headlines. Mr. Mugabe Muzale is an accountant by profession and holds a Bachelor of Commerce degree in Finance from Makerere University. As a member of the Committee on Commissions, Statutory Authorities and State Enterprises COSASE, he has been part of the team that has been probing the Auditor General report for the financial year 2020 to 2021 and looking into the national carrier, Uganda Airlines. Captain Firoz Kimji is an airline pilot and operator with almost 20 years experience. Captain Kimji has worked with various airlines in the past, including Uganda Airlines, Singapore Airlines, where he operated airplanes such as the Boeing 747-400 on the medium long haul and extra long haul on intercontinental routes covering most parts of the world. Captain Kimji also has experience as a crew resource management facilitator, having facilitated other pilots when it comes to skills and techniques by means of active on-screen presentations, group resources, and interactive participation. He has also done research in fuel-saving initiatives. Captain Kimji studied aeronautical engineering at the University of Manchester and has a professional pilot license conversion from the US, India, Zimbabwe, and Kenya. Ladies and gentlemen, our panel tonight.
Well, there we are, our panelists for the Big Debate tonight. Honorable and Captain, good evening and welcome to the Big Debate.
Good evening to our viewers. I just want to thank my brother for giving me the invitation to be here tonight to discuss issues that are affecting Uganda and most importantly, Uganda Airlines. Thank you.
Honorable, we've been seeing you people in the news, quizzing here and there. We're glad that you've made the time to be here today. From where you sit, is the attention really equivalent to the issue that you're dealing with?
Yeah, of course, the issue we're discussing is very important for this country. What Ugandans need to know, Uganda Airlines is a brand that is supposed to be used to market Uganda as a country. So whatever something that goes wrong about Uganda Airlines, automatically it affects the economy of this country. And that's why you'll find that most of the airlines across the globe, they do not make profits, but they are used to market the nation. But of course, that does not guarantee that management in that organization should not be mindful about the losses in that entity. So, of course, I'm happy for one thing that it has attracted the attention of the nation, and you've had people responding, giving their opinions, to the extent of the president also making some statements. Ministers from the ministry, that is Ministry of Works, making statements. So many people have really been concerned about this issue. And I think I just want to applaud my colleagues, members of the committee, for the good work that we are doing. And just to encourage them that let's stand firm on this very issue because we are doing a good job for this country.
All right. We're definitely going to dig into those issues, but I'd like to bring Captain Firoz in just as an introduction. We have had the experience that you have in the aviation industry. You're definitely an aviation professional, and thank you for being here this evening. As you see what's going on with Uganda Airlines, you know, from your experience, is this something very unexpected?
Well, thank you very much for having me here. I really am humbled that you want to talk to someone like me to contribute my little bit to this debate. We could have done much better. We are a bit of a, if I may put it this way, with all due respect, a non-starter, because we initially went into getting the wrong sort of equipment for our purposes, which, you know, if we had got better equipment that could then compete with others in the region, immediate region, forget about the big boys in the Middle East and in Europe. So, you know, when you get common equipment with other operators within the region, you have a lot of advantages, added advantages to that, like, for example, pooling for spares. One can lend spares to the other for the time being if you are stuck, for instance. Commonality in engineering, backup in services when you go to each other's countries, fly in, fly out, and so on. And of course, the other thing is we had a huge capital outlay, as I understand it, on these 6 aeroplanes, all bought outright and all brand new, to the tune of maybe $650–700 million. You add on to that our other needs for fixed heads, overheads, and deposits for, say, fuel contracts and others. It could amount to easily $1 billion outlay before you even get started. For a small country with a fragile economy like Uganda, you have to ask yourself, was that really prudent? And right from its inception, some of us, there are other colleagues of mine who've, like me, flown around the world with the biggest airlines, the best airlines in the world, arguably. We were advocating that we should go together as a regional team in this, like it used to be before. Remember East African Airways? It used to work very well. So we were advocating that we go into it with, in partnership with Kenya, Tanzania, Rwanda, and so on and so forth.
Right.
But here we are.
All right. But in relation to, the attention on Uganda Airlines right now,
yeah,
and the probe that's going into its operations and management, is this something common in the aviation industry?
Oversights are very common. They have to be there to provide a robust system of checks and balances. How else do you mitigate against risks of safety, risks of losses, and so on and so forth, right? So inquiries, questions must be asked, exactly like our honorable friends in Kosase are doing right now. And it is in the best interest not only of the taxpayer, but ultimately also in the best interest of the country. are we doing the right thing? If we are not, where are we failing? How can we put it right?
All right. Honorable, well, now that you hear from an aviation expert that this is not unusual, even if it wasn't a parliamentary committee, oversight in the aviation industry is definitely necessary. If you could just give us a sneak peek into what exactly is COSASE looking at? What caused you to start this inquiry here, and what have you found out?
Parliament, as an institution, works with other institutions. The other institution is the Auditor General's institution, which is attached to Parliament. And in most cases, before we go to investigate, we normally receive reports from the Auditor General, and it's on the basis of that that we dig deeper in understanding how the entity is operating. Now, the case in point, Uganda Airlines. A report was brought to Parliament, received by the Speaker, and when it's received by the Speaker, of course, he channels it to the relevant committee, and PAC COSASE is actually the one mandated to handle such reports. And the issues normally that we look at are both administrative, management, and accountability, because we normally find out how is the management of the institution, how are they managing the institution, then the financial accountability. And in this case, for Uganda Airlines, I think we've just only covered about 30% of the report that we have. Actually, we've just started, because we've not looked at the key managerial issues that were pointed out in the auditor's report. We've not looked at the real accountability issues. But of course, I'll be able to tell our viewers what are the issues in that report. And maybe to help our viewers, we started off with looking at the top management of the institution, because there's been a back and forth issues within the institution. Initially, we had management and the board, which was fired after a very short time. Then this other management that is currently on was brought on board. So we wanted really to understand what are the causes of these issues, changing management there and then. We also wanted to know how our managers within the institution, a baby, their level of professionality, their academic credentials, because we normally get information whenever we say, okay, now we are going to start handling institution X. There are always whistleblowers that will come in and tell you, you know what, gentlemen, as you go to interface with this institution, please pick up this information. Use it the way you want it. So now when whistleblowers come to us and they say, you know what, the person being called the CEO, he has A, B, C, D issues. Try to look at those issues and find out more. And of course, just like we are mandated to investigate, when you give us information, then we go deep to find out exactly what is inside there. And that's how we came to find out that management has issues. We realized academic papers somewhere. Some of the managers do not have them, do not have the required qualifications, the CEO herself, and so on. So that is what so far we've moved. Okay. We've basically just unearthed the issue of papers, academic qualifications. And we are basically moving now to, we're supposed to be moving forward to management, managerial issues, and then the financial issues. Because if I'm to tell you, Ugandans should just be, of course, this is just what they've just had is small. The real issues are also now are going to come out.
All right. As we wait to hear the real issues, from what you've just shared with us, yes, Parliament and your committee in particular has taken issue with, the academic qualifications of some of the, top management, but particularly the current CEO, Ms. Jennifer Bamoturachi. And what is the issue there for Parliament?
First of all, the executive director, Jennifer, we looked at her papers. And of course, we are interested in knowing her level of education. So we asked her academic credentials. And one, she told us that the university certificate transcript is not available. She only has a certificate. And she also told us that she doesn't have senior 4 certificate. She lost it. And she said for the university transcript, the university messed up with her documents. And we've just seen a disclaimer from the university saying, let her not say that, because that is discrediting the institution. Then in the advert that was actually soliciting a CEO, that put some qualifications for a CEO, which included a postgraduate diploma in in management. And she didn't have it. That one, she doesn't have it. She's actually doing a master's. And to our surprise is that you're doing a master's. And in the master's, for you to apply for a master's, it would require you to submit in your documents senior 4, senior 6, and the university transcript, which she said she doesn't have. So the question was, how did you then apply for a master's without such documents? Then the other issue that also brought in some little bit of confusion is when she had tried to apply for change of names at a time when the advert had run for the position of a CEO. So the issue was, what was the intention of you applying for change of names at the time when the advert was running? And then all of a sudden, you dropped the idea of changing your names at a level of your RBS when you had already registered the change of names. You dropped the idea. That is after the advert was pulled down and directly appointed as the CEO of the Uganda Airlines. So you would ask, what was the motive of changing the names at a time when the advert was running with the requirements that you didn't have? That's a question.
All right.
You need to, of course, judge and say, what was the intention really? For one, to apply for change of names, the advert is running for the position where you are, and you are applying for change of names. The other aspect, which we also found out, was one, we also came to know that about 41 Ugandans had applied for the job. And her, who is actually the acting CEO, had not applied for the job. Not until she was just appointed directly. Now, being the presiding officer of an institution, it means you are part of the preparations for anything that goes on. You raise the advert, but you don't apply. And you wait until the appointment comes out directly for you. Because we wanted to look at the papers she had submitted for the job, but we could not get it anywhere. So ideally, Those are the issues.
All
And
right. You interfaced with the human resource manager. Did you ask for the documents that the human resource manager has on file for because before she was holding a position in the airlines?
of course, the papers are not different from what I've said.
Okay.
What is there is what I've said.
Okay.
One, the senior 4 certificate is claimed not to be there. Senior 6 is there. University transcript is not there. A certificate from the university is there, and some experience from especially hotel management, marketing, basically, which would not think that would really really make her qualify for a job of a CEO.
All right. Let's hear from Captain Firoz, because my understanding is in the aviation industry, some of these things are really standardized. If you're looking for a pilot, yes, the training is very specific.
Yep.
When you're looking for a CEO for an airline, what is usually, the requirement?
Okay, I'm very glad that the Honourable Member of Parliament mentioned something to do with qualifications, as well as kind of an oversight. Now, when it comes to qualifications, you could, this is a high-risk industry, akin to perhaps the nuclear industry, where there are safety hazards always. And so you must make sure that you have absolutely the rightfully qualified and experienced personnel to run the show for you. Because when the traveling public considers whether to go with you or fly with the competitor, one of the primary areas they would look at is safety. Safety, 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 it is actually the catchword in the airline industry. This is what the big boys, the best airlines in the world do. And if there is any breach of safety, they will put it right very fast. How do you mitigate against the risks to safety? Meritocracy, pure and simple. So you use an individual's merit, i.e. qualifications, experience, skills, in order to decide what kind of a person you want here and which one you don't. Similarly, in management, a CEO or a engineer, for instance, or a commercial director, they always rise through the ranks, usually. So they're the stakeholders, true stakeholders of that particular industry. In this case, airlines. So a CEO would ideally have risen from the smaller ranks, in passenger handling, commercial perhaps, and marketing and so on and so forth. Experience levels probably 15, 20 years plus,
Right.
typically around the world. And that is how, if you do follow this line and you use purely meritocracy to appoint people, you will ensure that you have the best in the business, more or less, and therefore you will run a very good show, very efficiently and very economically. The other one is the system of checks and balances.
Right.
It's very important at the same time, because this is a very hazardous industry. Like in politics, I could kind of make an analogy. Two parties are better than one. The other party is providing a robust system of checks and balances to the one that may be going astray, may be making a mistake in decision making, and so on and so forth. In the airline, we have what we call pilots' unions. I used to be on the Uganda Pilots Association back then, and we used to provide this kind of a system of checks and balances against mistakes or transgressions from the management side. I don't know if I've answered your question.
Yes, you have. But when it comes to academic qualification,
Yes.
are there specific academic qualifications that are required or preferred for a person that's going to be CEO for an airline?
Well, I would think that most of the major airlines around the world and our competitors go looking for, as a minimum, a university degree, probably to the level of master's. in management and so on, and some level of experience, minimum 10 years probably or more, something along those lines.
Maybe to help you on that.
Yes.
You know, one of the questions that we actually asked, human resource, that as you were setting standards of a CEO of an institution like Uganda Airlines,
Yes.
where someone is earning 87 million, did you try to benchmark on this? Because they told us that for them to come up with that standard of salary and what allowances, they did a benchmark on other international airlines. So the question was, did you try to do the same on the qualifications of the CEO and the rest of other managers? Because there is a manager, we found that she only had certificates, senior 6 certificate, and she's called a director. She's at a level of a director, but you're holding only certificates of senior 6. So we asked them, did you try to do a benchmark on the qualifications of the CEO and the top management? Obviously, we didn't receive the answer because ideally, it was obvious that they could not tell us based on what we had found out. But ideally, the issue is just simple. If the Governor Bank of Uganda is earning 40 million and he holds a PhD, not only that, but let's look at other entities, other authorities that are within the country. You go to Road Fund, he's a PhD holder. You go to UNRWA, Masters and Plus, so many papers. You go to RARE and so on. All these entities, authorities. And by the way, they're earning even halfway what she could be earning. But all these standards have been set in these institutions that for you to be a CEO or a chief executive director, at least the minimum standard, postgraduate, master's, postgraduate degree and a master's. Now for you to hold only a degree and you qualify to be a CEO, yes, really in a serious organization like Uganda Airlines, of course, it's a challenge. And you know what is also shocking? The fact that the person who left the institution, whom they terminated the contract, has a robust experience. Yes, he has a robust experience in the airline aviation. So actually today we interfaced with him, and of course we got shocked. Very sober, explaining things thorough, and yes, you'd see someone. Now, actually, I just want to say this to my president because I'm a member of the NRA. And from the statements we've been picking, that the president said this in the cabinet and so on. It's just telling him that, one, we respect his opinion as a president, and also to tell him that as a committee, we are mandated to do our job. And where he finds that things are not moving on well, as the chief executive of this country, is at liberty to invite us as a committee. We explain to him our findings. It may not be good for him to label us so many as we pick from the media, social media, and mainstream media, something of the sort. We are ready to face our president, explain to him our findings. We are not doing it for purposes of blackmail or witch hunting someone or doing what, but our findings are based on our interrogation with the witnesses.
Actually, witch hunt is the word that has been used to describe part of the proceedings of the committee. And, you know, yes, part of the reason as to why your proceedings are being looked at as some sort of witch hunt is because the person who you're saying, the current CEO, did not appoint herself. There is an entity, actually the minister, you know, according to the regulations, I believe, the minister is the one that appoints. There is a board. So this person does not end up in that job on their own. Aren't you quizzing the wrong person? And therefore, doesn't that give credence to those who say this is witch hunt? Because you're going after a person who could not appoint themselves.
As a committee, our mandate is basically to investigate. And the purpose is whether to find out the right procedures were followed in the process of coming up with the chief executive officer of Uganda Airlines. We don't, for us, we have no problem with appointment of whoever, whether it's what, we don't mind about that. What we mind is whether the right procedures were followed at the time of appointing the CEO. And that's what we're trying to investigate. We have no objection with the president appointing her, but the issue at hand is she the rightful candidate? Was she the rightful candidate at the time? Did she have the qualifications? And therefore, our main concern is to put things right. Yes, the president, you have the powers to nominate, appoint, and we are not really, which word should I use? We are actually not trying to urge along those lines. Our concern is, does she have the right qualifications to qualify for that job? That's our main concern. Then the other part that will come is now the accountability issues that we're going to look at. Accountability issues means now we are looking at figures, because the auditor, actually Ugandans, most of them know that when you're talking about the auditor, you are entirely looking at figures only. But our auditors even got here to look at the management. How are you managing the institution? What are the issues? So we have two other aspects that we're going to look at: management and accountability. And I can say that, of course, what is there from the auditor's report, 2019, 2020, there was a loss of 102 billion. 2021, 2020 to 2021, there is a loss of 164 billion, and that's the very year we are actually investigating. And we are, and if I'm also to give this information, that the report that is also going to come out very soon, 2021, 2022, it is a loss of about 233 billion. Now you can see that every year the loss is increasing. Right. Now, this is to tell my president that if your informers are not updating you with the rightful information, if 2019 to 20 there was 102 billion loss. Now, 2021 were the best per se, as is being portrayed, that she's the best CEO we had, or the best candidate that we had. She has moved from a loss of 102 billion to a loss of 164 billion. Now, that year partly they shared with the former CEO of 2020, 2021, they shared it. Now this year, where she has been fully in charge of the institution, the loss has gone to 233 billion. That's a report we shall be looking at in the future, in a very short time.
Yeah. But I'm sure you've come across information that losses in the aviation industry are not, very peculiar. This is actually something that happens. In fact, we actually have a video clip in relation to, information around losses in the industry, especially in this post-COVID-19 era. Let the technical team just play that for us to bring our viewers up to speed with some
as
of
they
those
play
comments.
that,
Yes.
I want to say this. You know, yes, we agree that civil aviation or airlines make losses. We are not objecting that. But when losses begin to increase instead of managing, reducing them, what signal, what message does it send out there?
All right, let's watch what was said at a press conference earlier today, and then we will have, the expert weigh in. Technical team, over to you.
COVID in August. You see, it has impacted all airlines. It impacts more than airlines which is starting. Because Uganda Airlines started in 2019. Just after the COVID
in August.
You see, it has impacted all airlines. It impacts more than airlines which is starting. So, making profitability in normal situation, it's 5 years.
With my colleague Shakila, we appreciate that aviation hasn't been a big thing in Uganda. The last airline was Uganda Airlines, was Air Uganda, which was about 7-8 years ago. The national airline closed about 21 years ago. So the level of knowledge and understanding is limited, because if you say the loss is this big, you need to be able to understand what is in this loss and what can the airline do to bring this loss down. The airline looks at the cost structures. So that's the kind of knowledge we want the public to know. That
All right, that was the sidelines of a press conference. I believe the gentleman is, I think, the General Secretary of the African, I believe, Airlines.
AFRA.
Yes, AFRA. Yes. Captain, just help us understand this whole issue of losses, because even when, Uganda Airlines was being re-established in 2019, there was quite a bit of conversation around, losses and how those were going to be managed, and the trajectory from that point on, because Honorable, has given us the figures here, and it seems like they just keep increasing. Can this be explained?
Well, like in any other business, when you start off by setting up a business, before you even get to day one of operations, what would you do? You would do a feasibility study. That feasibility study will be quite in depth, and that will tell you, A, how feasible this particular business is in your particular setting and your environment, and B, it will also tell you by which point in time, timelines here, 5 years, 10 years, 15, do you expect to break even,
Right.
and then to start making profits. That's what you want ultimately, otherwise why would you set up a business? Airlines are not any different. Feasibility, is this viable? How long? What will be our overheads, especially the big ticket items like fuel, staff salaries, maintenance, and either capital outlay to buy aeroplanes outrightly or to lease them.
Right.
If you buy planes outrightly, this is not really the done thing these days, in the aviation industry, because you have to really lay out huge sums of money before you can even start operating. There is the other better option, lease. On leasing aeroplanes, it's like hiring a cab rather than driving your own car and buying it for 45 million. You might hire a cab and you use probably a tenth of the amount of money that you outlay initially, until you are able then to generate revenue to justify you now probably buying 1 or 2 machines outrightly. So feasibility studies, then staff operating costs, fuel contracts, maintenance contracts, And cost control. Cost control is very, very important. You must be able to work with what they call a thin pencil. So every penny counts. I could give you an example of Singapore Airlines, for instance, where I come from.
Yes.
And they do exactly this. Every penny counts, and if you spend over and above what you are expected to, you must answer. You must be fully accountable. Now, this is what the Honorable Committee is doing. They are trying to make these people accountable. Because after all, this is their purview, because the taxpayer needs to know. It is in the best interest of who? The taxpayer and the country, right? So, cost control is very important. Contracts, you can always negotiate contracts. Nothing is cast in concrete in as far as business is concerned. The other person wants to sell you fuel, and he wants your money. So you will be able to say, let's sit down and talk about, we're going to give you a business for 1 million liters of fuel in a certain specified period of time. What is the best price you can give us? And you go shopping. Something along those lines.
All right, but when we hear, Honorable, I'm going to come to you, but when we hear, for example, you know, top leadership, you know, from the African Airlines Association saying, you know, many airlines are making losses. It is expected that losses should be, you know, happening at this time, especially with disruptions from COVID-19, with passenger numbers going down and things like that. This is confusing for the public because on one end, yes, there is, you know, as a business, you're expected to make profits, or, you know, at the very least, minimize your losses. We're seeing the losses going up, and then top people are explaining this away.
Precisely, and I did some of this kind of thing in way of getting involved in the fuel saving committee, for instance, amongst other things, in Singapore Airlines. And we're looking at how to optimize usage of fuel every time you fly. If you fly 1,000 flights, say in a month, and you save even 200 liters of fuel every flight, that is a lot of saving already on one item. And then there are many others. Now, in our case, it's a bit of an interesting area of concern, I would say, the amount of money that is being paid to pilots in Uganda Airlines, with all due respect, of course. If you're earning what the major airlines of the world are paying their top pilots who have been there for 15 years, they've built up a seniority, then they start earning to the tune of $15,000 to $18,000 total package in a month. That comes to about 50, 60 million shillings. That's what our pilots are getting today, I'm told. And I'm told reliably. Really, is this the right way for a fragile, fledgling national air carrier with 6 aeroplanes? You've got to think seriously about this. That is a huge cost factor.
Right.
If you multiply it with how many number of people earning that kind of money.
You can see Honorable is smiling because he's got very good information here.
Yes, of course. Sure.
Honorable, you wanted to chip in there because we need to take for a break. So if you could very quickly make your comment.
Actually, a member from Association of what?
Of African Airlines.
African Airlines. He explains the COVID scenario. By 2019, COVID was at its peak. And of course...
The total lockdowns and what have you.
Yes. So there were limited travels.
Yes.
And according to business, limited travels means now the company is not making any business. So you expect the losses to be high. Now that COVID has gone down, we expect that now people have resumed the travels. So the losses should have come from 102 billion to now 50. If it was reducing due to the increased number of travelers, then it would be justifiable.
Well, that time you were not buying fuel, you were not repairing the planes because they were probably grounded. You know, and there were many other things that you probably were not paying for.
No. I just want to say this, that if no business, overhead costs are high. Now that there is business, we expect a reduction in those overhead costs. Therefore, we would expect the loss to be down. Now, it is not even justifiable for anyone to convince me at the moment. At 164 billion loss, that means daily the company is making a loss of 500 million Ugandan shilling. And if we go by the new figure of loss, which is 233, it means we are going to progress to about 700 million losses per day. The functional aircraft may be about 4 out of 6, maybe about 4. Now, I don't know the kind of mathematics I can use to equate the loss vis-a-vis what is in operation. I just don't understand. Is it that every flight that the aircraft goes, because they're almost not moving even daily, by the way.
Yeah.
Because we have minimal routes up to date, about 6 routes only. Yet we would be having many routes to catch up with the cost. So, I do not know who can really convince me that a loss of 700 million daily
is something that should be accepted and
is something acceptable.
Right.
And it's something that you can convince me that the management is superb and doing a good job for us.
We need to take a break at this point, but when we return, we will continue the discussion. Please interact with us, use the hashtag SEETV Big Debate, and we'll be able to benefit from your questions and your comments. Please stay tuned, because after these messages, we return with a big debate.
This is SEETV. Don't blink. SEETV is now on StarTimes. You can now catch all your favorite programs, our daily comprehensive news bulletins, and so much more on StarTimes channel number 248. Stay tuned for a world of endless possibilities. SEETV. Don't blink.
Sometimes in life, we spend all the time trying to live other people's life. And along the way, we lose who we are by copying what other people are doing in their relationship.
You see, from the last time I met your sister, I've not spent a day or a minute without thinking about her.
It's a good surprise on a Monday. This is nice.
So you and him are
we're just friends. Wow. Come on.
Just friends.
You either tell me where you're from or you go back to where you've been.
Thinking it would work out for us, but yet to find out that's not who we are after experiencing a great disappointment.
She's in love with some other man, so classy, a gentleman, not poor dogs like you.
These are the mistakes girls do.
Now showing on SEETV. Don't blink.
Do you love me?
Very much.
I'll catch you one day. Pants down.
I want to spoil you. I want you to eat my money.
She believes I'm in love with her guy.
Will you go? If I had to live everywhere I'm not loved, where would I end up?
The dirty guy hides in the hospital for 40 years, but at night, he walks the streets, commits crimes, and then he comes back and pretends to be alive again.
I will make you spooky.
Do not answer any question about Roho. Use your brain!
Now showing on SEETV. Don't blink. This is SEETV. Don't blink.
Welcome back from the break. We're glad that you've kept it here with us on the Big Debate. I'm your host, Iguma Gabriel, and today we're understanding the Uganda Airlines saga. We have a member of parliament, we have an aviation expert that is just giving us, in-depth information on, how we should look at this issue. And we're very soon going to move to, the way forward as our time runs very quickly. But just to introduce our panelists a little further, the Honorable Martin Mugabi Muzale. He is member of parliament for Buzaaya. This is in Kamuli district. He's also a member of the Committee on Commission Statutory Authorities and State Enterprises, COSASE. This is the committee that's currently, looking into the accountability issues with Uganda Airlines. Our other guest, Captain Firoz Himji. He is an airline pilot and operator, and he has about 20 years of experience.
40.
40. Oh, wow. 40 years of experience. He did work with Uganda Airlines, the original Uganda Airlines.
Yes,
and, I believe just before you returned to Uganda, you worked with Singapore, the airlines in Singapore. Yes. And in fact, if just for a minute or so, the original Uganda Airlines at that time, what were the the hopes and the dreams for the national carrier?
Well, it had good promise, I must say, because you remember at that time the East African community was just about breaking up. We had the beautifully set up East African Airways in those days, which belonged to the 3 partner states at that time, and it was doing extremely well. So we had very well trained and grounded staff who, most of them were stakeholders in the industry. They knew their job very well. And we had a lot of Ugandan citizens who were working for East African Airways. And I will have you know that the best of the staff in East African Airways, pilots, cabin crew, engineers, actually came from Uganda.
So then,
isn't that something?
Yes, it is fascinating. But then, what happened? Because
well, you see, East African Airways unfortunately was disbanded because the East African community was breaking down because of the bad politics of the day, and we got a lot of very good, well-trained and experienced staff from East African Airways to come and help us start Uganda Airlines, and they did, and it was running okay. Although we had in those days 2 Boeing 707s, 2 Fokker Friendships. And we had a King Air, Beechcraft King Air as well. And, we had some good passenger loads, good safety standards, and so on and so on. We were doing quite okay in those days. Then issues of management came in, and should I say mismanagement came in. With all due respect, we were going to go in for a very good wide-body aeroplane at the time, the DC-10. The DC-10, 3-engine wide-body aeroplane. That one was apparently going to be the last one from the production line of McDonnell Douglas in America. Unfortunately, for whatever reason, although some deposit was paid for to book the aeroplane, it was taken away, and then some other airline took it away. That might have been a pretty good, big kind of a jump for us in revenue earnings and passenger loads to Europe and to other places. But be that as it may, it didn't quite work out, and for reasons I've kind of alluded to, and we went under, unfortunately. And then, of course, we had big competition too, by the way.
Right.
Kenya Airways was coming up big
Right.
time.
Right.
And that was the biggie. And of course, not to forget Ethiopian Airlines, South African Airways. Those were the big boys coming up as well, and they were giving us a run for our money.
And on the return in 2019, those were actually the big boys, Ethiopian Airlines, South Africa, and then KQ. And you mentioned earlier on that we should have learned from what was happening in the industry. We should have learned from, probably seen the aircrafts that they had, and we would have thought in that direction. In your view, how did we get that wrong?
Well, I think probably not all the stakeholders were properly consulted, perhaps one important aspect. Some of us were outside working for big airlines. Although we are Ugandans, we should have been working for Uganda. But nobody consulted us. We have all this experience, knowledge, stakeholders, and I'm not the only one. There are a couple of others that I can mention who were also working for the major airlines, had great experience behind them. One of them is the famous Captain Kisoro. I'm sure you heard of him.
Yes.
But nobody consulted us in any way at all. Okay, so how did we get into where we are today with wrong equipment and so on, like I mentioned? There were those that were consulted because they happened to be nearby, nearer home.
Yeah.
And they'd flown these types of aeroplanes outside in Nigeria, and before that in the Air Uganda times, if you remember, Aga Khan.
Yes.
Those days. So it was easy enough. We've flown this, we can fly them again, so let's bring these airplanes. And then the Airbus Neo. I am actually at a loss to understand who else in the entire continent of Africa is flying that airplane. This is already where our problems start, you see. If we fly this Airbus anywhere within Africa and we get stuck, for instance, what they call AOG, aircraft on ground, which needs a spare part, critical one, in order to get it airborne again, who's going to give it to us? Now we might have to wait until Airbus industry sends us a part from France all the way to wherever we are stuck to repair the airplane and then make it fly again. And you know, every time an airplane spends time on the ground,
you're losing money.
It's losing money.
Yeah.
Thank you. And when the Airbuses came, how much time did they spend on the ground without flying? 6 months. 2 Airbuses, 250 million each. That's $500 million lying on the ground for 5-6 months. Why? So sorry, but again, with all due respect to those who were involved, it was a non-starter for us. And here we are.
Well, before I bring the MP in,
yes,
part of part of the attribution to the high costs of running the airline is the increased cost of jet fuel. So probably viewers will relate with the fact that fuel costs have gone high. It's not only for fuel that we use for, let me call it, domestic use in our cars, in generators and what have you. Yes. Jet fuel has also, the price of that has also increased. In your view, is this commensurate to the increases and especially of the losses? Because that's what we were talking about before we went for the break.
Well, again, when these kinds of things happen, but not only when these things happen, every other time you must be looking at minimizing your costs in any business, not just the airline. you would think, okay, how am I going to reduce cost here? And there are like 50 opportunities to cut costs in, I could name many, in this area, that area, flight operations, commercial, staff salaries, overheads, allowances, and so on and so forth. I can liken this issue of increased fuel costs to, say, operating, in a very small, simple analogy, a taxi. Yeah, or even the matatus and the boda bodas we use, have they not increased their prices?
They have, yes.
So what would the airline do? Fuel surcharge. Sorry, fuel has gone up. Landing fees maybe have gone up. Overflight charges of countries maybe have gone up. Air navigation service charges maybe have gone up. What do we do?
Incorporate that in the cost for the ticket.
Generally speaking, the airlines typically pass on that additional cost to the passenger. And the passenger will pay. If they want to fly and they have to fly, they'll buy.
Because you're not going to walk from Uganda to Dar es Salaam.
Are you?
All right.
Of course
No.
not.
All right.
Not even swim.
So, well, Honorable, you did state earlier on that this is just the beginning of this investigation. And yes, quite a bit of attention has been, especially on, the CEO not showing up for, two of the meetings that you were expecting her to come for, the gaps in, academic qualifications, also the gaps, the red flags raised by, the issue of an advert is put out. You do not, even show interest. Then you are appointed. You're changing names and what have you. But there are other things that, you have found out as a committee. Are you saying that this here is the most important? And what are some of those things that Ugandans should know that the committee is looking at?
One, of course, the issue of qualification is key because it determines the skill of management. When a job is being advertised here for a manager, say marketing manager, and you come with your profession in the field of accounting, certainly they will say, we are sorry, you have the academic qualifications of to a level of a degree, but we are looking for specific qualifications to do with a marketing manager, meaning we need someone who has ever done marketing in the who has ever been in the field of marketing, and that's the person we are looking for. You could come with a master's degree in what and so on, but they said no, we're not looking for a lawyer in this case, we are looking for marketing. So the reason why we had to start off with the qualifications is because we realize that it's key in of course sparking stability and determining the progress of this industry.
Okay.
So it is very key.
All right. Your inquiry, it has been said of your inquiry that it is causing an untold amount of reputational damage to the airline. Is this something you're concerned about?
Certainly, of course, we have to be concerned about it, but our committee is, we are dealing with the public institution. Therefore, everything must be public because the taxpayers are the shareholders of this institution. So they need to know what is happening. Of course, we've been told that we should do our exercise without the media, but we don't find it. Anyway, I think what is important is that the management streamlines its service. That is what is key. These are internal issues. Internal issues. Someone who is actually going to say, I want to travel Uganda Air, may not need to know how much qualified is the CEO.
Right.
What is most... I was
actually going to say that, yes.
Yeah, what is most important, as the senior pilot has said, safety.
Safety, yes. I'm more interested in the qualification of the pilot than that of the CEO.
And for us, we are looking at the top management. The pilots and so on, of course, for them they are safe because we looked at their qualifications and they would pass the test. So we have no problem with the pilots. But what we are looking at, the managers of these pilots.
As the people who give strategic direction to ensure that
because they are the business developers, they are the what and so on. So any mess up in the top management is the very reason why you are seeing these losses.
All right.
And they will give excuses, as you've said, the increase in jet fuel prices. But as he has explained, all this cost has to go to the passenger.
End user.
End user. Because one, if the fuel has increased, the ticket has also increased. Uganda Airlines will not tell us that a ticket of 2019 is the same cost of a ticket 2022. No. They shouldn't lie to you. Secondly, there has been an increase in the number of passengers. What they've only failed to do is to increase on the number of routes. Because by now we would be flying either to UK, India, and many other destinations. I don't know for what reason. Since 2019, they have not moved to expand routes.
All right.
Because that would also lower the what? Lower the cost.
All right. I believe that's why Captain said that oversight in this sector is very important, because then it keeps you, on track with achieving what is supposed to be achieved.
Actually, what Ugandans should be happy about is that our intervention, of course, as we place them, we are of course trying to push them. Let's look here. Because some of us were coming from different professions. We have lawyers, we have business acumen, we have what. So we combine all these talents. And whenever we ask questions, we keep on also advising them and giving them, trying to advise them on how best they can manage business. We do not just end at squeezing them, but we also give them ideas. Look here. Why are you making losses like these ones? Because like today, the question was, tell us what exactly could be making us to lose all these monies we are talking about in terms of losses, 164 billion. If you equate it to a day, it is about 500 million. What exactly? Which kind of loss? Where do these losses come from? Then they are able to tell us, since 2019, we had 6 routes and we've been stagnant at that. So, say, where is the problem? Why are you not moving out to market? What is failing you? So, ultimately, at the end of the day, after this entire exercise, we hope to achieve a lot.
All right.
One, we hope to achieve that we shall streamline the management of the airline. Secondly, accountability issues. Whenever management realizes that at the end of the financial year, our organ interface a panel of people with different backgrounds, because we have also auditors within, among us ourselves. We have auditors, we have accountants, we have lawyers, different fields. So at the end of the day, year in, year out, they keep on improving. As they come to interface us, they begin to realize. Now, Jennifer, by the end of this, she will have realized she's not the alpha and omega. Because at the time when she came to interface with us, she thought she was so big, and she could see an MP earning below her. So by the time we finish her, I think she'll have realized that really MPs have powers, because right now she has not yet realized it. And by the time we finish this, you'll realize that, yes,
all right.
Much as you are appointed by the president, but you are answerable to parliament.
Okay. There are a few questions I have in relation to that, but I'd like to just bring Captain in on the issue of reputational damage, because that's where I began with you. On reputational damage, how do you, limit it, or how do you contain it when you have things like this going on? Because yes, the reputation of an airline is quite important for the confidence that, passengers will have in that airline.
Absolutely, and at the risk of agreeing to disagree with the Honourable MP, of course, one of the ways that damage occurs in an inquiry like this is when the media is present and they're covering everything, and now they're publishing it. And it's not just local people like within the country that are reading and digesting what's going on. Remember, it is also the international community through some of our diplomatic missions from overseas that are reading this and looking at it. And here goes our reputation. So that is one probable area where a lot of damage can be done. Although, on the flip side, it's good for the taxpayer.
Yes.
It is candid, it is out in the open, it is overboard. You're not trying to conceal anything. You're saying, yes, we have this problem, we have that problem, how do we solve it?
Right. And
then we begin to solve it.
Right. And when you have, the tendencies of this, a reluctance to take action. And therefore, when you have a number of people actually looking into this issue and raising concern about what's going on, in Uganda, what's going on with the airlines, probably there will be, a prompting to take action. All right, Honorable, you just talked about, yes, the MPs have power, and, yes, the president may appoint, but accountability is a role that you have. Well, 2 summons have been, if it's going by what we have seen, blatantly ignored. There were threats for you to, invoke your powers, the powers that are equated to those of the High Court, being able to summon anybody and to even direct the, police to cause the appearance of a person before a committee. Well, it seems like you're limited in this area.
No, one, yesterday we sent summons to her, and she didn't appear. But of course, the line minister sent us a request to permit them up to 11th of next month. Well, it's not too far from now. But ideally, what I can tell you, no one is above the institution of parliament except the president. Except the what? The president. So, we can afford to give you benefit of doubt. It's okay. Whatever excuses you want to give, fine, it's okay. Let's grant her.
The 11th will come, and when it comes, the questions will still be there.
Yes, you are giving excuse that you are handling, there were some pre-planned activities which are basically helping us to have routes Y and X. And these are the areas where we've been making, the reason why we've been making losses. We've had limited routes. So allow us to engage these people and have these routes. Up to when? 11th. It's not far from now. How many days are left?
2 weeks.
Yeah, about 2 weeks.
That's 2 weeks. We still have some other entities that we can interface with and give you that time. And time will come. We are not going away. No. I'll be around. God willing, the committee members will be around, and we shall still interface with her.
All right.
So, what I think is, of course, it's intended to pass time and see how she can perhaps pick up a few things and so that by the time she comes, she's perhaps better than the other day. But ultimately, she will come. The time will come. But I want to give you assurance that if she doesn't come, if she does not appear, we shall cause an arrest. And two, it's dangerous because we are the one to pass your budget. We can decide, it's okay, fine, it's okay. You failed to appear, it's okay, go on. Go on. June is not far from now. It's not far from now. And we say, no, we are not passing this budget until person XY is not in that institution. We can decide to say it. Because we shall write, because if she does not appear, it is to her disadvantage. We shall write our report based on the auditor's queries. And say, we called this institution, it didn't come, and the issues of the Auditor General stand, plus our own findings. So when you come, it is to your advantage because you'll explain. Perhaps the auditor didn't understand you. So when you come, you'll explain to us, A, B, C, D. And sometimes you find that what stood as queries, sometimes you find that in the final report, our recommendations are saying different.
All right. All right, gentlemen, because of time, would like to move very quickly to, the recommendations as we come to the close of today's episode. But the honorable member did state earlier on that today the committee interfaced with the former CEO, but also, the chairperson of the committee, the Honorable Joel Senyonyi, did have some remarks that he made in relation to how the committee is going to move forward. Let's watch that, and then we will start to draw towards a close. Let's watch this.
Concerted effort in the media to tarnish my name, to say all sorts of things that I had done or detracted from the company or been corrupt, which things never happened. The truth of the matter is that for some reason there was a group that wanted me out of there, and I can only allude to the fact that because I did see it before and I said it in my report to the principal, that there were concerted efforts to introduce measures where people could profit from the airline in the areas of procurement, and also people could influence the recruitment of staff, all those areas which we resisted. On the question of whether or not we are firm on corrupt practices, I can tell you, Honourable Chair, that I was very firm on that, and everybody knows it, including the board at the time, because they did talk to me, that people found me to be very rigid. And they mentioned a lot of things about why sometimes we are also, they even alluded to the fact that the reason we are not getting our money quickly from the principals was because we are very strict. We had a robbery in one of the stations which we felt was stage managed by the individual who was the supervisor there. I immediately removed him from there. But surprisingly, the very first week when I left, that same individual was the one who was designated to go and take a post in a...
I'm going to seek to meet the Speaker because this is not about Joel Senyonyi. This is a committee of Parliament who are given instructions to do this work. We want to see if there can be support we can get from the office of the Speaker to be able to do this work. So all this is clarity that we want to have a good understanding of, okay? And we have been seeing a lot in the newspapers. So if there's somebody above Jennifer Bamturaki who doesn't want Kosase to inquire into the operations of Uganda Airlines.
Honorable, just looking at that clip, it's clear that the issues to deal with in Uganda Airlines are probably much bigger than what you have discovered so far. what are you ready to do in order to put this airline back on the right track?
One, of course, as I said it earlier, that our work basically is to help management improve on its operations. Management, accountability issues. Because as an accountability committee, we inquire into so many things, and the purpose is not witch hunt, blackmail or what, but basically to help management streamline its operations. So as a committee, of course, our interest is simple. We want to help the management that is there, that look, here you are not doing things right. This is how things are supposed to be done. If the problem is with the qualifications of the managers, then we should get experienced people to run the institution. If issues of accountability are not proper,
right,
we want to say, look here, according to our financial act, this is how things are supposed to be managed. This is not a personal business, it's a public entity, so whatever you do must be in line with the regulations. So Uganda Airlines is not in any way special from other entities of government. And this is what we're saying, that provided Uganda Airlines is an entity of government, then it must, for certain rules, it must abide certain rules. It must understand that Uganda as a nation has rules governing government entities. And this is what we are saying, that whether, actually that's what I say, that if the president feels that we are not doing a good job, we want to interface with him, because we respect him. He's the fountain of honor. He's the chief executive of this country. Instead of him backbiting us and saying this, branding us, this and that, let him call us. We shall go to him. I was on PAC.
The Public Accounts Committee?
Yes, in the 9th Parliament. We had issues to do with Basajja Balaba on Nakasero Market and the Owino. There were issues, and there was a lot of fire in the committee. The president called us. We went to State House, explained to him our findings, and we said, look here, Your Excellency, you could be misinformed by your informers. This is the actual. And he agreed with us. So equally in this case, our interest is not to fail Uganda Airlines. Our interest is to see that we streamline Uganda Airline so that it becomes, when we say Uganda Airlines, Uganda crane is carrying, flying crane.
Yes.
Is carrying our flag. And that's the reason why we say Majazi is making losses. But we accept that, yes, let's go on with the loss, but the loss should not go out of hand.
All right. From, the clip that you watched of the former CEO, he does insinuate that there are deep interests, and, I don't know, how is the committee dealing with those revelations, whether made directly or, insinuations that there could be people who would want to, profit from the airlines in not very official ways?
Of course, a lot of information has come in. And he himself, he gave us also information on how some individuals who are working against the interests of the airline for their personal benefit. But that's the information I cannot really give out here, because we've not investigated it thoroughly until I'm sure because now he has made what we can call allegations, or he has given us information. Until we meet Jennifer and his board and the management, we ask them these very issues that this gentleman has pointed out. You know, he pointed out quite a number of issues. He opened us. He opened our eyes, our ears. He told us a lot of things. So that's why I said earlier on that it is to the benefit of Jennifer that she should come and appear. We ask these issues. She either accepts or says no, or gives us proper explanation. Then we can really put out some of these issues.
All right.
But if she says I'm not coming, I don't see it working in her interest.
All right. Captain Firoz, you know, as the committee continues to do its work, you know, where do you think focus should be to put this airline back on the right route? Because at the end of the day, one, Ugandans are proud to have a national carrier in the skies and landing in all these prestigious, you know, airports. But then number two, it would be very good to have a profitable, you know, airline.
Yep. So like in any business, really, you have, say, two columns. One is costs and one is earnings. You reduce your costs and you increase your earnings. Your costs are here, your earnings are here, say. Now you're doing this, you're narrowing the gap over time, slowly but surely. But you must have the determination to do that. And you can look at, like I said, almost 50 areas of cost-cutting points, like procurement, fuel contracts. You can recontract, you can renegotiate maintenance, supply of catering, etc.
On maintenance,
yes.
The minister has actually revealed that their plans of building, you know, our own, I think it's called a hatch or something like that over here to do the maintenance, you know, and CAA will be providing space for that. Now, for something like that, of course, it's going to be a huge initial investment. In the long term, is that something that pays off?
It should, because it wouldn't only be catering for in-house maintenance for Uganda Airlines. It can now also provide its services to other visiting airlines from wherever at a cost. That's one. The other thing, I believe we are going towards having our own ground handling company. That's a huge cost. Again, ground handling will not only be handling our own airline. It'll be providing the same service to all other visiting airlines into Entebbe, and say at a cost. So this is another area of earning revenues in the long term, and minimizing, if at the same time increase revenues, minimize your costs, then you start working in the right direction. Instead of your costs going exponentially up, now they will be maintained, contained to the point where now you can say this can be a viable proposition over a period of time.
You speak of ground handling, and
Yes.
Many times when we speak of ground handling, it's usually referred to as one of the most lucrative, you know, money makers when it comes to, you know, the industry. Is that accurate?
It is actually a big contributor to an airline's revenue earnings. Like in the original Uganda Airlines, for instance, as an example, ground handling was one big money earner, huge. And unfortunately we lost it. We should never have lost it. Then we might have been able to sustain the original Uganda Airlines a bit longer, I think. Kenya Airways handling, for example, how much money do they make at Jomo Kenyatta Airport? For handling not just Kenya Airways, but all major international airlines that pay to be handled, you know. The other one is we can consider carrying some additional cargo in the unutilized space that we have in these aeroplanes that are not being fully utilized. So for example, Kenya Airways being one of them, many airlines during the pandemic asked for the regulatory authority to be given a special permission to carry cargo in the cabin, soft cargo. And now airlines were making huge profits It jumped, I think, from a certain rate per kilo 7 times. And they were carrying masks, sanitizers, and all these other soft supplies in order to manage the worldwide pandemic. And you can imagine the numbers that were being carried and the revenue earnings when it jumps to 7 times the rate per kilo. That's another way that we can actually add to the revenue earnings of Uganda Airlines.
Right.
The airbuses that are unutilized, like half the time of the week, could be doing that.
All right.
Well.
Certain times when investigations like this are going on, we can tend to get distracted by, some of the shiny things, get distracted by the politics. As, a professional and, a technical person, where are some of the areas that you think focus should be put, even as this inquiry is being made, so that at the end of the day, things are more robust?
In this inquiry, to find where we are leaking money or something like this. Of course, procurement, accountability, justification of costs incurred, allowances, trips, and so on and so forth. Because these are all areas where people will take opportunities to make money for themselves. Oh, just lay on a trip somewhere, which is it justified, and you earn $1,000 in allowance for 2 days or 3 days, for instance. And so on and so forth. Every cost factor must be justified. Is this necessary? If not, cut it out. If you incurred this cost and it was not justified and not authorized, you pay for it from your own pockets. That's accountability, ultimately. And if we are to do this with a clear conscience and a love for not just our airline but our country, country's best interests, I can assure you this can happen.
All right. We'll have your final word and then we'll have the final word from the MP.
So the final word is we can make this work still with what we have. We can make the best of a pretty bad situation. And I say this with all due respect, but we still can. Because we have smart people in Uganda. Very smart, very learned, very experienced. And you can attract them. There are still some who are outside. I can name a few very highly qualified engineers, for instance, who can be director of engineering here. But they're not working for us. Why not? We need to attract those. And have the right people, rightly qualified, in the right places. And we work with, minimal stuff, the minimal necessary to start with, so that we cut staff overhead costs, which are really high. And then we can go forward from there.
All right. Yeah. Honorable, as you give your parting shot, it's also very important to state to the public, what to expect in the coming days as you handle this inquiry.
One, first of all, is to promise Ugandans that we shall do our best to come up with the best report. And of course, we've been writing these reports, and we've always given the best report. We had the one of civil aviation, we had the one of Uganda Railway. So I want to really give confidence to our viewers and Ugandans at large that we are going to produce the best reports in regard to Uganda Airlines, and also tell them that our focus, as Senior is here, he has said it real well, our focus is to have the right people in their right positions. Because once we can achieve that, it means we are going to reduce on these losses we are talking about. We are going to
increase productivity.
We are going to do quite a number of things. I'm very sure, much as they say that almost every airline is making losses, I want to think that we can, given time, we can get a break-even point where we are actually breaking through. But right now, if we don't intervene, the way I'm seeing things, 2020 to 2023, we shall have a report that will be reading 400 billions in losses. Meaning every year, these people are not ashamed. They can say that every day we are making a loss of 1 billion. Now imagine we are just on a running operation aircraft, functionals per se. Out of 6, 4 are functional. The 2 are, I don't know for what reason, they are not. And we are going to get the information because we are going to ask for this information because we can get it. Give us the schedules of routes and tell us
which aircraft is making
which aircraft moved here.
Yeah.
We need those schedules. So if only for operational functional aircraft and you're making a loss of 164 billion in a year, our worry is, what if it increased from 4 to 6, then to 10? How will the loss be like? So if we don't intervene, ideally, it's going to go out of hand. So my prayer to our fellow Ugandans is that please encourage us, pray for us. It's not really a simple... initially, we used to think as a committee members, we said, but why don't we move for the big entities like UNRWA, National Water? Why should we go for Uganda Airlines? This is like a small thing. Kumbe, we didn't know what is.
Beneath the
we're just being shocked
of
magnitude of money that is being messed up and the losses that is really...
you did talk about it earlier on, and your chairperson did talk about it in that video. You know, the claims of intimidation. Will you back off?
Well, the truth is, we've been talked to, but you know, when you're doing the right thing, just like I've said, I have not really interface with my president to pick a statement right from him and come here and say he said this. So I'm still on hearsay. But I'm just saying, if he's right, let him call us. He's the fountain of honor. We work on his behalf, by the way. If this airline performs well, is the biggest beneficiary. They will not even know the contribution Muzali did. They will not. They will say Museveni has performed. So, whatever we are doing is the biggest beneficiary.
All right.
Can I quickly make a quick point? Sorry about this. Here again, we must be ready to admit that we have a problem. Only then can we start solving it. And I'll give you an example, a quick one if I may. When the NRM came to power, if you remember, we were one of the only countries on this continent that admitted that we had a problem with HIV. Then we solved it. Then what happened? We actually were probably one of the only countries in the world that reduced or reversed the occurrence of AIDS in this country, unlike many others on the continent who didn't. Now, the other thing about having the right people in the right place, meritocracy. If you use meritocracy like Singapore Airlines does, now Singapore Airlines today is where? Arguably the best in the world. Why not? We could be the same. If we use pure meritocracy and nothing more, not know who, know how.
Yes.
With that, I will...
We have to leave it there. Yes. Captain Firoz and Honorable Muzale would like to thank you very much for joining the big debate tonight.
Thank you.
Dear viewer, thank you very much for joining us for this edition of the Big Debate. I return next week with another edition. But from me and our guest for tonight, it's a good night. God bless you. Stay tuned to the quality programming here on SEETV, and don't blink.